Hi and welcome to another training with Stephen White Coaching. So today we're looking at Nutrition 101. And this underpins everything we do as regards nutrition on your journey with Stephen White Coaching. Now, it's not a deep dive into any particular aspect of nutrition. We will be doing that in future training sessions. It's more of an overview of the most important things to get you moving right now. And there's plenty in here that you can be actioning right now, which will move you closer towards your goals. So first things first, don't think that because it's the fundamentals or that it's super basic or that it's called Nutrition 101 or that you might have heard some of this before that it won't be of benefit, because it will, I'm sure it will. And I need you to watch and really take on board what's in this training and start actioning right now. So first things, keep it simple. It's so easy to want to overcomplicate nutrition. I've done it. And what I've learned along the way is that simplicity really is key. So I've fallen into the trap of having, overcomplicated meals with loads of healthy ingredients, all of which I've spent ages carefully tracking, measuring, weighing, but it's just not sustainable. And quite often I give up and then go back to my old habits. So I basically now have the same breakfast every single day and nearly the same lunch every day, or I have a few lunch options, of which I know the nutritional values and I know that they can fit into my plan. As for dinner, we might do something a bit more exciting or interesting, but generally we have about 5 or 6 meals that we have on rotation. So after measuring and tracking those for a while and adding them into MyFitnessPal, I have a pretty good idea as to the nutritional value of those meals. And so it's actually really quick for me to add them into MyFitnessPal and to track them every day. So the more simple you can make it actually, the easier the adherence will be. And as you'll discover later on in this training session, adherence is absolutely paramount. So don't feel like you have to overcomplicate things. Now, I know it's not always what people want to hear, because often I know people want to hear about the magic formula that got someone in crazy good shape. So please don't feel like just because you've seen some really hot guy in great shape doing something on Instagram, spouting about some, calorie cycling protocol that he's on, it's not necessarily the complexity of that protocol that got him where he is now. In my opinion, and with myself, my own experience and my experience with other clients, it really pays to keep things as simple as possible. So please bear that in mind when doing anything with nutrition and don't overcomplicate it. If it can be simplified, simplify it. Okay, so we're going to look at the Helms pyramid. So for the uninitiated, this is the Helms pyramid attributed to Eric Helms. So if you want to check out his stuff, you can look at his website. It's on the screen here. Now, fitness professionals use this all the time and for very good reason to explain and break down nutrition. And like a pyramid, it's built up from the bottom up, with the most important elements, supporting structures, being the foundations and the bottom layers. So as you can see here, at the very bottom in the foundations, you've got behavior and lifestyle. So we'll touch on that another time. But at the bottom part of the pyramid, we have energy balance at the bottom, followed by macronutrients, micronutrients, nutrient timing, and then at the very top, the smallest section, is supplements. So let's work through it and in order of importance from the bottom. So what do we mean by energy balance? Well, this means calories in versus calories out. And that really is the foundation of nutrition. It's the biggest and single most important thing, whether you want to lose fat or gain weight, and it underpins everything. The crux of the issue when it comes to losing weight is that you must be in an overall energy or calorie deficit, i.e. you must be using more energy or calories than you are consuming. But as we get more advanced in terms of fat loss or sculpting, performance or sport or whatever your fitness goals are, this can often require the right balance of macronutrients, so that's the next layer up. So macronutrients, so we're talking about proteins, fats, carbs and alcohol, but let's not think about alcohol right now, are that next layer of importance. So then we have the micronutrients above that, which is your vitamins and minerals, all of which are super important. And then we have nutrient timing, i.e. so the time at which you consume your meals. So that could be in relation to, proximity to bedtime and, when should you eat before a training session or so forth. Now, it's super important to say here that it is fine to eat carbs in the evening after 6 p.m. It's bullshit that carbs are stored as fat as you sleep. Because if you're wanting to lose fat and you are in a calorie deficit, it's absolutely fine. And for some people, carbs in the evening actually help them sleep better. So it's about finding what's right for you. We don't have a cookie cutter approach here. Okay, so we have certain principles that we know work, but we need to fit them to you. So also, if you eat too close to bedtime, you might just be a bit uncomfortable, which then affects your sleep, which then has a knock-on effect on your mood, energy levels, and ability to focus or eat sensibly and train the next day. So you can see all of this kind of has a knock-on effect. Now, at the very top of this pyramid, we have supplements. Now, unfortunately, most people put most of the focus on supplements. I know I did when I started my fitness journey. I was thinking that there were going to be these magic pills that were going to get me in great shape. And as this pyramid hopefully demonstrates, you can take all the supplements in the world, but if you aren't in a calorie deficit, if you're eating more calories than you're burning, you're going to continue to put on fat, regardless of the supplements that you're taking. Now, please don't get me wrong, some supplements are really useful, and as we progress on our journey, I will be making some recommendations, and I probably made some at the start for you. But they're not magic pills. What they do is they fill the gaps in your nutrition. For example, it might be protein powder that we've talked about using. Now, it's not a magic supplement by any means. It just helps you hit your protein target if you're struggling to get enough protein from the foods that you're eating. So protein powder also has calories in it. So if you're trying to lose fat and you've already hit your calorie target, there's no point taking that protein powder if it's going to take you over your target calories. And when I was starting out, I used to think that I just weed out any excess protein in my body that I didn't need and didn't really think about that element of calories. And I wondered why I wasn't losing fat. What an idiot. Now, it's good to be aware of the Helms pyramid model, and I would say it's still more than is needed for the vast majority of my clients, which is why I've simplified it down a wee bit further to this one. So as you can see, it's only got 3 layers. But at the bottom, energy balance and calories still underpin everything. See, we're trying to keep it simple. But calories are still the single most important thing when it comes to driving change in terms of body weight. So we're talking about fat loss or muscle gain, which tend to be the predominant 2 goals of any of my clients at any one time. And calories are really the most important thing. As I've said, you're not going to lose fat if you're not in a calorie deficit. And it's a lot harder and often inefficient to try and build muscle if you're not in a calorie surplus. Now, give or take some exceptions. So for example, people new or returning to training after a long time often see what we call newbie gains. Even if they're in a calorie deficit, it's their body's just adapting this way, and it doesn't last forever. So if I've set you a calorie goal, this needs to be your primary focus, okay? Now, when you're starting out, it's so tempting to go super hard and want to try and lose as much fat as quickly as possible. Now, I've tried to put the reins on a lot of my clients early on, because this is what you might have done early on. This is what you might have done in the past on your own, but it's not worked, has it, long term, because that's the reason you're here. So what I'm asking you to try and do is hit the calorie target for a reason, because it could be that we need to reset your energy levels before we go into the rapid fat loss phase or whatever phase we're going into next. Or perhaps we're trying to avoid the over-restriction mentality, which, although can work short term, can be unsustainable in the long term. And more often than not, that results in, weight regain, and sometimes you put on even more fat than you had at the beginning. So we need to make sure we're fueling the body properly. So please don't try and hack the process by eating fewer calories early on. Sometimes your target calories can be a bit of trial and error in the beginning, and it takes a couple of weeks for us to get to the right level, but I promise we will get there. Okay, next up in the pyramid is protein. So protein is of secondary importance, let's say. So once you've nailed your calories and you've got within the range that you've been given, the next focus should be hitting your protein target. But what is protein? Well, protein has an energy density of 4 calories per gram. So after water, your body is made up mainly of protein, and it's used to repair and build new body tissue, as well as regulating hormonal processes and building enzymes. So that's a bit scientific. But we need it to build and maintain muscle, and it's essential we keep a positive protein and nitrogen balance, because the more muscle tissue we have, by eating good quality protein every 3 to 4 hours, the better. So we talk about that, about eating protein almost at every meal. And as I've mentioned, for fat loss, calories would be a ceiling that you wouldn't want to go over, whereas protein is more like a goal that you should hit if you can. Now, next up in level of importance is kind of equal for fat loss, is carbs and fats. Now, people are often terrified of carbs, and a lot of people still think that if they eat fat in their food, that it will be automatically stored as fat. And the number of times I've tried to explain to my mum that this isn't the case. So, well, let's have a think about what they are. So carbohydrates, like protein, have an energy density of 4 calories per gram. And they are the body's fast-acting primary energy source. And and building muscle often requires a surplus energy. So that's why carbs are good in that, in terms of building muscle. Whereas fats have an energy density of 9 calories per gram, so a lot more calories per gram. And they're incredibly important for the human body. We shouldn't be scared of fat, because without them, the body couldn't function properly. So they're really needed to maintain healthy cell membranes. They help with the production of hormones, especially testosterone. So it's super important. So we need to make sure that we have enough fat in our diet as well as carbohydrates. Okay, so I've put them in joint third place for a few reasons. Now, studies have shown that actually people wanting to lose body fat do enough by simply tracking calories and protein. Yes, low carb and low fat diets can work, but they're super restrictive, and ultimately they result in a calorie deficit, which is why they work, because they cut out or vastly reduce key macronutrients. So by simply focusing on calories and protein targets, we have flexibility in our diet. So some days you might want a higher carb day, and other days you might want a more balanced, or a day that's higher in fat. Now, depending on your goal and where we are at in our fitness journey, and as we get more advanced, we might play with those macros a little bit more and give them targets. So for example, if you're about to go on a beach holiday or you had a photo shoot, we might want you looking leaner, and sometimes that can come from going low carb for a short period of time. Not because carbs are bad by any means, but because we know that for every gram of carbohydrate you have, it holds on to about 3 to 4 grams of water. So by going low carb, you can reduce the water weight in your body and look less fluffy and leaner. So to reiterate, I will have given you a calorie target and probably a protein goal, and perhaps a fat or carb goal, depending on where you are in your journey. But what we need to think about is nailing your calories and going after your protein goal. So that's of second importance. And I'm happy to give most clients a bit of leeway as regards fats and carbs. So please don't demonize carbs or fats. Just look at them as almost interchangeable and giving you that flexibility, because ultimately we need you to stick to the plan. And this flexibility with carbs and fats is a tool that we can use to promote adherence. That means, you're more likely to stick to the plan because it's not unduly restrictive. Now, just in terms of those calories per gram, again, it's good to remember that protein and carbs have 4 calories per gram, but the fat does have 9 calories per gram. And that's often where it gets a bad name, because people, when they overeat fat, they've actually overeaten calories, not that fat is bad. So next up, we have food quality. Now, this is super important. And many coaches say that, they will help you lose fat without giving up the foods that you love. And I've done it too, and I do believe it to some extent. But actually, if that means you're going to survive on McDonald's and ready meals as long as they fit your calories, that you're probably not going to hit your protein target or get the vitamins and minerals that you do also need. Also, they're probably not going to keep you feeling full, which can mean you end up looking for more food, and then that will take you over your calorie target, thereby hindering any fat loss. So what we want to do is actually build long-term sustainable habits And for me, food quality is super important in that. So the quality of the food that you buy will dictate the quality of your biology and the quality of, how your body breaks it down, and I guess the quality of your entire body. So what I mean by this is looking at single ingredient foods, and you can see in this picture there's a lot of single ingredient foods here. So for example, I've got some broccoli, it's one ingredient. The salmon, the egg, and the avocado, they're all one ingredient foods. However, if the salmon was processed and had extra ingredients in it, it's no longer a single ingredient food. Or if the avocado was turned into guacamole and sold in a plastic tub, it's not really avocado anymore. It's been through several processes, thus reducing its food quality to some extent. Now, I'm not going to go into a deep dive into food quality right now, but what I'm going to ask you to do is trying to stick to single ingredient foods where possible, because those single ingredient foods are going to be more easily digested by the body, more recognizable to the body as actual foods than some processed rubbish. Not that it's all rubbish, but that will also cause considerably less inflammation within the body than their processed counterparts. Now, it's also important to remember that processed food often contains a lot of sodium, salt, and that can really, really mess with your weight loss. So please don't overestimate or underestimate the impact of poor food quality, did I say that right? On your long-term fat loss. So the universal goal here is to increase food quality by reducing the number of ingredients in each constituent part. So if you're buying a chicken breast or chicken, look for a chicken breast, maybe not a chicken Kiev, because the Kiev will have been heavily processed and thus the quality of that food would be reduced. Now, we know that affordability is sometimes a big issue and quality foods can seem like they cost a lot. So in terms of veg, I would say buy frozen veg if needed, as it can be cheaper. But in terms of meat, the quality of my meat is sometimes my biggest expenses each month. Sorry, I got distracted talking about my meat. So I've touched on this already, but next up we have the linchpin, and that's consistency and adherence. And both of these are crucial to a nutritional protocol. So as you can see here in this picture, we have one of the darts in the bullseye, and the rest are kind of scattered all around the board, and that's very analogous to how people eat. So, for example, they nail it one day, they hit the bullseye, they hit their calorie and protein target, but then they kind of take their foot off the gas and they throw darts here and there and all over the place. Ultimately, they're not being consistent, and largely this is where people fall down, in my opinion, as they're just not consistent and they don't give stuff long enough to work. They don't have the patience. So you really need to try and be consistent. And if you are struggling to be consistent and there's an inherent problem with your diet or your nutrition protocol or plan, please come and speak to me so that I can come and help you find where the problem is and we can try and fix it. So ultimately, nothing that we've just covered will work unless you're consistently turning up and consistently hitting the targets on the pyramid. So on the next slide, this is an interesting one. So for the last 18 months, during which time I've lost around 25 kilos, I've had this burger with chips almost every Friday night with an extra meat patty and jalapenos. Now, it's from a place here in Malmo called Bastard Burgers. No, really, they have a bit of a different attitude to swearing here. Now, when I was working with a coach during that time, he recommended that I have this burger, even though it's higher in calories than other more nutritious, higher quality and filling options I could have been having. But I was still in a deficit when I was eating it, by the way. Now, I wasn't calling this a cheat meal because that's an awful phrase and that demonizes food and promotes a poor relationship with food. But my coach talked about the Snickers paradox that he'd come across. So he had a client who ate high quality food all the time, but every day he had a Snickers. And that seems to go against all we think about as coaches in terms of losing weight. But with this client, even though everything was bang on the money, everything was so good, his food quality was high, he was hitting his targets, he was having a Snickers every single day. But my coach told me, what if I told you that if we told that client to take the Snickers out of his diet, the rest of his diet would fall apart because he then craves the Snickers or craves chocolate and then ends up binge eating the weekend or binges every fortnight or when he finally caves in. So by giving himself just a little bit, it keeps that monster at bay and allows you to enjoy it. So nutrition shouldn't be about restriction or avoiding anything. You should be able to enjoy yourself. So for me, it was having a burger meal with my husband every Friday night. So my advice is, and I give this to most people, if there's something that you really like and you find yourself craving it and avoiding it would cause issues, then I would allow yourself within moderation and within reason and the principles we've gone through to have it. So buy a fun size bar and have one every day or every other day. There's not one of you listening to this that can't fit a fun size chocolate bar or even a chocolate bar into your calories every single day and still stay on track. So, weirdly, in the Snickers case, or in my case, the burger case, it could be said that the Snickers or the burger was actually the most healthy thing in the diet purely because it was the cornerstone holding everything together. Because without it, everything else could fail. So please don't get caught up and think that you can't enjoy little treats. It's about managing and pre-planning and making sure that you have everything in kind of calorie controlled amounts. So, the key takeaways, apart from the burger. Ultimately, nutrition is best kept as simple as possible. Do your best to keep everything as simple as possible. Please don't overcomplicate it. And also, don't try going from where you are now with nutrition to where you want to be or think you should be in one giant step. Take your time and move slowly so that it can be sustainable. After that, we've got the order of importance in terms of calories being number one, protein second, and then we have carbs and fats. But remember, food quality matters. And something I see overlooked repeatedly is people eating a lot of processed food and actually maybe not getting the quality that they should be getting. Then consistency is key. I need you to turn up and be adherent. If you aren't able to be consistent or if you aren't able to adhere long term, there's something wrong with the plan and we need to change it. So raise it with me as soon as possible so that we can try and fix it. And then the last point, don't restrict yourself too much. If you're missing something and you're missing something to the effect where you can feel a binge coming on, then you need to be putting in small calorie controlled portions of that food into your diet on a regular basis. So have it, but just track it and make sure it fits. So I hope that's been helpful and I'll speak to you all in the next training. Thanks a lot. Cheers.